Nothing. A reading from the second book of Chronicles. King Solomon and the entire community of Israel gathered about him before the ark, were sacrificing sheep and oxen so numerous that they could not be counted or numbered. The priests brought the ark of the covenant of the Lord to its place beneath the wings of the cherubim in the sanctuary, the Holy of Holies of the temple. The cherubim had their wings spread out over the place of the ark, sheltering the ark and its poles from above. The poles were long enough so that their ends could be seen from that part of the holy place nearest the sanctuary. However, they could not be seen beyond. The ark had remained there to this day. There was nothing in it but 2 tablets, which Moses put there in Horeb, the tablets of the covenant which the Lord made with the children of Israel at their departure from Egypt. When the trumpeters and singers were heard as a single voice, praising and giving thanks to the Lord, and when they raised the sound of the trumpets cymbals, and other musical instruments to give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. The building of the Lord's temple was filled with a cloud. The priests could not continue to minister because of the cloud, since the Lord's glory filled the house of God. Then Solomon said, "The Lord intends to dwell in the dark cloud. I have truly built you a princely house and dwelling where you may abide forever." The word of the Lord. How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord, mighty God. How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord, mighty God. My soul yearns and pines for the courts of the Lord. My flesh, my heart and my flesh cry out for the living God. How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord, my God. Even the sparrow finds a home, and the swallow a nest, in which she puts her young. Your altars, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God. How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord, mighty God. Blessed they who dwell in your house. Continually they praise you. O God, behold our shield, and look upon the face of your anointed. How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord, mighty God. I had rather one day in the courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I had rather lie at the threshold of the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord, my God.
A reading from the first letter of St. Paul to the Corinthians. Brothers and sisters, you are God's building. According to the grace of God given to me, like a wise master builder, I laid a foundation, and another is building upon it. But each one must be careful how he builds upon it. For no one can lay a foundation other than the one that is there, namely Jesus Christ. Do you not know that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you? If anyone destroys God's temple, God will destroy that person. For the temple of God, which you are, is holy. The word of the Lord.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. At that time, Jesus came to Jericho and intended to pass through the town. Now a man there named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector and also a wealthy man, was seeking to see who Jesus was, but he could not see him because of the crowd, for he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree in order to see Jesus, who was about to pass that way. When he reached the place, Jesus looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down quickly, for today I must stay at your house." And he came down quickly and received him with joy. When they saw this, they began to grumble, saying, "He has gone to stay at the house of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Behold, half of my possessions, Lord, I shall give to the poor. And if I have extorted anything from anyone, I shall repay it 4 times over." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a descendant of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save what was lost." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So obviously I'm aware that you can't hear me. So when I greet you after Mass, you don't have to tell me that, because I'm just as frustrated as you are. I don't know what's the matter with that thing. We installed it when I was here last, and I'm beyond frustrated at this point, since it just does whatever it wants. Paid for that thing. I'll be making a call this week, and the guy's been out here 3 times already, so I'm just as mad as you are and frustrated. I'll have to take a flirt lozenge when this is done here, so just bear with me. I do have a letter that I wrote to you wherever my announcements went. Oh, there they are. I do have a letter that I wrote to you in the bulletin. It's about the building stuff, so that's kind of what this homily is about. Today is the feast of the dedication of this church, 50 years to the day. So it's actually a very special day for our church. We're supposed to celebrate that on the Sunday nearest to the date. So if you didn't receive that letter that I wrote to you, just take a look in the bulletin. It's there. If you're not receiving emails from St. Andrew, you have elected not to receive our communication, or your email is no longer valid. Contact the parish office to correct this. Catechesis of the Good Shepherd is our parish program for students who do not attend our school. We offer sessions on Sunday or Wednesday evenings, and registration is open. If you homeschool and your child needs to make their sacraments, please contact Lucinda Buckner in the parish office. Our first night of adoration went very well this last week. I still really want to encourage people to sign up. That's the sort of stuff that's life-changing for us, right? I was in here at 4 a.m. It was great. There was maybe 8 people here. It was a wonderful thing to see. So our next dates will be September 5th and 6th. Announcement from our sacristans, and I guess from me too, please stop removing the glass candle globes from the church. They do cost us money, so there's an extra charge for these. We're losing a lot of them. They have legs, and they're kind of walking off throughout the week. So if you want one, you just got to pay for it. I'm talking about the actual glass, with the color on there. And our RCIA classes will begin Wednesday, August 21st at 6:30 p.m. in the parish hall. You may register online. We look forward to seeing you there. Like I said, 50 years ago today, this building in which we sit was dedicated by Bishop Helmsing at that time in 1974, which is why we're celebrating its anniversary with these special readings and Mass texts. Like I said, please take a look at that letter in the bulletin I wrote for you. If anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. But I do want you to take it home and consider what I wrote in there and why I wrote it that way. Just think about it. So in the second book of Chronicles, that's what we hear about Solomon's temple today. We learned that the design of that temple is actually the template for all Christian worship in the Apostolic Church. And a lot of people, when we go to a church building, we often think as Catholics, well, maybe that has some sort of meaning. I don't really know. Maybe the priest gives meaning to the thing. We don't, actually. The things in our temple are not arbitrary, but they're actually rooted in a long-standing tradition. It actually goes past the last 10 minutes, or any sort of personal like or dislike if we're doing it right. To the contrary, if we're able to understand the temple, which is what I'm going to talk about today, then we're able to understand why we use the things we do. The temple was divided into 3 parts. What were they? You had this thing called the ulam, that's the vestibule in the back of the temple, and then you had the hakal, which is the assembly place for the priest to offer the different parts of the ritual. And then you had the Holy of Holies, and it was behind this massive curtain. And the massive curtain had on it 2 sewed cherubim. And in the holy place, though, the general chamber right there sat a couple of different things. First of all, you had the table with the bread of presence. There was 12 loaves on the table. Once a year, the high priest would take one of the loaves, and he would show them to the people, and he would say, "Behold the face of God." What does that sound like? Then there was also a menorah in there, too, a 7-branched candlestick. When we have the Roman Rite and our bishop comes to celebrate, then we put a 7th candle out there. It's like a menorah. It represents the 7 days of creation. And then there was the altar of incense, too, as well. But behind that large curtain was the ark. Anyone know what the Ark of the Covenant is, right? The place where God made himself present, traveled with his people in an imminent way in the desert. On this mercy seat, this throne, was 2 cherubim. Nothing on the throne because God is invisible. Underneath that throne was what? We have the 10 Commandments in the box. We have the manna, or what is this stuff, the bread from heaven. And we also have Aaron's rod, who was a priest. So there's all this symbolism going on here in the book of Chronicles. And once a year, the high priest would go behind this curtain. Only he could go behind there once a year. Only he could go behind the curtain. And what would he do? He would take the blood of a bull and he would sprinkle it on the mercy seat. And he would put the sins of himself and his people, Israel, on that mercy seat so God could forgive them. That's what Jews today call Yom Kippur. It takes place typically in September. That's what they're celebrating. In Christian worship, all of these things come to fruition. They actually had their full meaning now. So in early Christianity, they have house churches during the time of persecution. But eventually, early churches kind of took the same shape as a synagogue. That was the place where people would go to read and the temple as well. So what do we have in our church right here? I'm just going to give you a little tour right here. In the back, we have the vestibule or the narthex. That's the place where we're supposed to pray to come into here. We're supposed to pray in the back, not pray, but we're supposed to prepare, rather, in the back to come into the holy place. So once we've gone into the holy place, how do we come in here? We purify ourselves first with holy water, right? Water that has been blessed, so we could begin to actually come in here and prepare ourselves for worship. So contrary to popular belief, anytime a new church is built, we call it the gathering space. That's not what it's for. That's why the ceiling in older churches are always low in there. It's meant to be a little bit more, not as grand as the main church to prepare ourselves. So after we end up here, this is where we worship. This is where you worship, right? Comes from the word which means ship, and you're sitting out there to worship. In the Latin West and the East as well, there's always a barrier. Actually, I'm glad we have it in this church right here. That goes back to the most ancient times in Christianity. There's always a large wall or a curtain or something else, just like the Old Testament, which separated this part from this part. So this is like the Holy of Holies up here. I don't think we realize part of the church or that the altar rail was invented to receive communion. It was actually invented as a barrier between the sacred and the profane. Profane, not in a naughty way or that something's dirty out there, but the place where God resides himself. That's what it was actually for in the beginning. So traditionally, only the priests would enter into the Holy of Holies. Notice here in our Christian church, the tabernacle replaces the ark. So it's very common to have images of angels adoring the Blessed Sacrament. So that's not just something that, oh, I like that, or that's a nice thing. It's hearkening back again to the Old Testament. And we're actually missing our tabernacle veil. That's why there's rocks. Veil, not the candlelight. It tells us that the Lord is present there, just like in the Old Testament. And then in that tabernacle is what? Is the Blessed Sacrament, right? And because the Lord is now the fulfillment of the Ten Commandments, he is the law, he is the high priest. He is, like he says, the bread which comes down from heaven. And on this altar, we no longer offer incense or a bull or some sort of goat or something else, but the Lord himself takes upon all of our sins. And this is made present to us in an unbloody way, so that you and I can receive God. We can receive the fruits of that Mass, and our sins are placed on that. That's why I do this. That's why I put my hands over there like you do. All the sins of the world are placed right here in the Lord. Why? That we can live. When we come to church, I want to say this one intellectual point for those who can hear me. I'm really frustrated that doesn't work, but when we remove ourselves from our roots, when we kind of don't understand this stuff, what happens? We end up having no identity. We assign meanings to things that they really don't have that same meaning, or we just assign a meaning to something because of lived experience or what I might think it was because of my own life. And the thing itself then doesn't have any inherent meaning apart from us. What happens then? We actually kind of become like our own God. But when we grasp the truth, we must conform ourselves to the outside concept. That's what that means, and the concept that God gives us. I would say the concept of what is sacred, which a lot of us don't understand. Sacred can be summed up like this. Familiarity with the divine breeds contempt. Right? Like too much familiarity with a relationship. Do the same thing with the things of faith. It could lessen our faith. Get rid of our sacred tradition, when we get rid of our culture. If we follow the faith of Scripture and tradition, who forms us then? Not you, not me. God forms us. He forms us to be like who we're supposed to be. There's no consternation anymore. There's no wonderment about what sort of choices we should make or how this is about me or my preference or something else like that. God tells us how he wants to be worshipped. And then we're free. Sacred always includes boundaries, too. That's why we have this here. The sacred has boundaries. Just like in a relationship, relationships have proper boundaries, right? There's boundaries in your house, too. If you invited me over to your house, wouldn't it be kind of weird if I went to your medicine cabinet and rifled through it? You'd be like, whoa, all right, stay out of my bedroom, Father. That's odd. I don't want you in there, okay? All right, I don't want you in mine either, okay? Get out of there. I do make my bed every day. It's the same sort of thing, right? It's a sacred place. So that means that the sacred has to be untouchable in some way. That's how God remains mysterious, but also immanent because we receive him right here, right? He feeds us. It's not mysterious. We're going to make a mistake ourselves for God. So our spiritual foundation as a parish has to rest on those eternal truths. It has to. God tells us how to worship him. God's not a vitamin either. He's not. He desires a relationship with us, which is why he feeds us with himself. In fact, we have no power over God. Those of us who have experienced any sort of hardship, we know that. We have no power over God. Zacchaeus in the New Testament doesn't run to touch Jesus. He just wants to look at him. He's up in the sycamore tree, but Jesus approaches him. Mary Magdalene, after the resurrection, tries to grab onto Jesus, and Jesus says, no, I haven't ascended to my Father. That's the sort of way we should approach the sacred. That salvation will come to this home. It will come to the home of our individual hearts when we're ready to offer ourselves as he willingly offers himself for us. When we respect the sacred boundary, the mystery unfolds before us. There is peace, there is order. There's no more consternation anymore.